I did want to start here, and I apologize in a way for doing so, but I know you've gone on myriad programs to discuss your friend Dave Cokin, but I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it. So Dave Cokin, on July 30th, did pass away. Many know him as the GOAT in the industry. Before you came in, Scott, I was telling Dustin, circa, 2000, 2004, somewhere around there, I was scouring sports betting message boards to find your picks, to find Dave Cokin's picks, and it was reliable for me. And unfortunately, he passed away. One thing I would like to say that I'm going to give the floor to you is you can still go to Dave Cokin on Twitter, and I'm so glad the family left it up, because if you're ever feeling down or feeling sorry for yourself, I think his spirit and attitude is a reminder of what life's all about, because literally days before he passed away, he was still doing what he loved. He had the same spirit, the same energy, talking about sports betting, talking about sports in general, and interacting with his friends, constantly writing you, Scott. You guys were going back and forth. Just a man, when people pass away, we talk about him and sometimes we speak highly of him. But as you know, as one of his very best friends, somebody that deserves all the praise.
Oh my gosh. Dave is he is the GOAT. You described him. I mean, nobody did radio, TV, handicapping, sports betting like Dave did. Nobody has before him. Nobody has since. And so I've always called him the GOAT. And he was a mentor of mine, but he was more than that. He was a great friend. And I'll tell you guys, I won't get as candid as I did on Saturday night at his public dinner that we had for him when there was about 70 of his closest friends. Got to see Steve Fezzik, by the way, at Dave's public event, which was great. I haven't seen Steve in quite a while. But a lot of great guys. Andy Iskoe, Marco D'Angelo, Steve Fezzik, Matt Humans, right down the line. But anyway, I want to describe, first of all, the very first time that I met Dave Cokin, which was 1988, towards the end of 88. It was my first radio job. And I was running the board for a couple of the shows, and at night we were a sports station. When we had our sports teams playing, it was a weird station. It was a lot of, I guess you could call it crooner type music, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, those kind of guys when we weren't playing sports. And then, of course, a lot of bot time in between. And we were doing a lot of local boxing, so I was operating the board. It was Seat Williams and Dave Cokin who were doing boxing. And I had never heard of Dave. It was, again, I was 21 years old, working my first radio job. Right away, I'm like, this guy's voice is killer. I'm operating the board. I'm hearing, yeah, this kind of stuff going on. And I'm like, this guy is killer, man. And so I'm listening to him. A couple weeks goes by. I did a couple of shows where I'm doing the board. And I'm sitting in the studio, and the doors open in the studio. And I hear right outside the studio in the hallway, I hear this voice going, let's see if I can get it right now. It was... he's nothing but a tomato can with an occasional left jab. Cokin's in the house, and I had never met him before. I'd heard him like 2 or 3 times. So I immediately get up from my seat. I go out and I introduce myself to Dave Cokin. And a year later, we're working together on all kinds of stuff. Fights here in town, local broadcasting on fights. Obviously, we worked together on Proline, the TV show, for many, many years. The Jim Feist Group, Stardust Line. Dave and I were doing the Saturday night Stardust Line with Seat Williams. Eventually, Dave moved to Sunday nights. He had a run there, guys, by the way. Dave Cokin had a run on Sunday nights in football. It was an opening line show, basically. And they would talk about the next week's numbers with college and pro football. And at the end of the show, they would give their top 3 to 5 picks, let's say. Dave had one season that I don't think I've heard anybody have on that show. Had to have hit, I swear, not kidding, 75% on that show for the next week. And you could watch Pinnacle. And as people were waiting, and as soon as Dave gave out his plays towards the end of the show, ping, 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 ping. You could watch Pinnacle, the lines moving. Never seen anything like it. It was crazy. Most phenomenal season I've ever seen anybody in this business have. So anyway, make a long story short, now that it's long, Dave and I became incredible friends. My wife, he was a friend to her. He was a friend to my daughter, my brother, my dad, everybody along the line that was close to me was close to Dave, because Dave was just such a cool guy. So, Dave and I texted, by the way, since texts were available 20-some years ago, 15 times a day or night. Most of it, 89%, 90%, talking about games that we had that night. In fact, I'd get frustrated because sometimes you just want to turn off the TV. I'll get the scores later. And, of course, Dave would be like, did you see that? Did you see that bomb? Did you see that? And I'm like, God, I just wanted a stress-free night for one. So part of it was that, but also talking about, everyday stuff. So I got to tell you guys that he passed away, as you mentioned, on July 30th, about 4 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. And I find myself still, as of last night, for just that split second, something happening during a game, and I reach for my phone. And before I can even pick the phone up, I'm remembering that Dave's not here anymore. It's a really tough situation for those of us who knew Dave well. Sorry, getting a little choked up here. But we were past this point, I thought. But anyway, what happened that last week is I was supposed to go to Dave's on a Wednesday, and he texted me about 1 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, and he said, hey, buddy, he goes, I'm going to be in bed the rest of the day and night. He goes, I'm not doing too well today. Let's try to do this again in a couple of days. Me going over to his house, watching some games. All right, Dave, no problem. And Wednesday night, about 9:30 that night, I got a call from his caretaker, and David had passed out on the floor and then eventually got to his bed. She took him forever to wake him up. And then when she was able to wake him up, he didn't know who she was for a while. The next morning, he was on his way to in-house hospice care. And I'm going to say it was probably around noon that day. They took him in around 9 a.m. And about noon that day, I texted him and I said, hey, I hear what's going on. I go, I'll be over there later today when you get settled. And he said, thanks, man. He goes, I can't wait to see you. And his caretaker, I've become friends with, his closest friend, Aaron, angel on earth, no doubt about it. I texted her and she goes, Dave's really pissed off. Pissed off like you won't believe that he's going to in-house care. And I said, well, that's Dave. There's no doubt. Well, that was the last time I heard from Dave. He fell into a deep, deep unconscious state later on that day, and he passed away 3 or 4 days later. So that's what happened to Dave. I'll choose to remember all the good stuff. Great guy. The dinner on Saturday night was just incredible. 60 or 70 people walking in and out of the place at Oasis Bar during the night. And a few guys gave speeches. I was one of them, got a little too candid, told people a little bit too much about some of Dave and I's our experiences on the bar scene back in the 90s, but everybody had a good time and laughed about it. And we're having one more dinner for him tomorrow night. It's a private dinner among about 15 of his closest friends at one of his favorite restaurants, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of laughing, some tears. Kelly in Vegas, Kelly Stewart's going to be there, Matt Humans, people that knew him real well. And I can't wait to go there and see some people that'll be there, Jim Feist. But anyway, I could go on. We could talk for 6 hours for the next 3 days, 6 hours each, and I could tell you stories and the good times that I had with Dave Cokin, one of my top 3 favorite people I've ever known in my life. So it's going to be weird without him, man. But you're right. The guy never complained. Day one that he found out he had head and neck cancer, he told me, he goes, it's not good. It's terminal. And within 20 minutes later, he's texting me saying, all right, enough. No whining about this crap. It's life. Who do you like tomorrow in baseball? That was Dave Cokin a year ago, May. I mean, just unbelievable after he found out. Never complained once. Never complained one single time about having cancer.
I could listen to you talk about your friend all day. So first off, I just want to say thank you for that. Of course, our buddy Scott Spreitzer talking about who many believe to be the GOAT, Dave Cokin. May I just follow up? What do you think, like, as far as his spirit? Because I do take such, you're giving me the timeline, and he's tweeting right before he went into the coma. Like, What do you think fed his temperament, fed his spirit? Like, he just seemed like somebody that was, like, literally just seizing every day.
Oh, but he lived that way. That was his whole life that I knew him. I knew him, for 36 years. And 35 years, I never knew Dave to ever feel sorry for himself, ever, about anything. Guy goes on, he had a couple of really bad college basketball seasons a decade ago. He was doing so much radio, he wasn't given the amount of time you need to do, the college basketball grind. He had a couple of really bad seasons. I think he whined about it twice. Each time it lasted like 3 minutes, and then he was like, I'm moving on. So Dave it was uncanny how he just never felt sorry for himself, even in rough times. And in the roughest of time, he still never felt sorry for himself. He had one regret, he told me, and he said that his one regret was that he never got married to somebody he really cared for years ago. That was it. That was his only regret in life, he said. And he just lived his way. And I know a lot of people say that about friends and stuff that pass on, but Dave Cokin is the epitome of living life your way, and he did till the very end.
And I just love, he had a whole look about him. He looked like Vegas. May I ask where Dave was originally from?
Rhode Island. Yeah, in fact, his ashes are going to be spread in the next week or so at different spots that he told a couple of his friends back there to spread his ashes. So, yeah, Rhode Island, he does. He looks like the guy you met on the rail at the track. And I'm not talking like Delmar. I'm talking like Exarban, and I can say that because I grew up there, so I know about Exarban. But he just looked like that guy. He's the guy in the back room at the tobacco shop that sells sports magazines that's putting numbers and changing them on the board as people make bets because he's taking the bets and he's the guy in charge of the numbers. That was what Dave Cokin looked like, and he embodied what he looked like. There was nothing like preconceived about, I'm going to wear that Kango hat so I look cool, or my shades in the nighttime so I look. That was just Dave. It was him. It was real.
It's when I would think about Vegas as a kid as a sports bettor.
Yes.
When I went to Vegas, I would pray I would see somebody that looked like Dave Cokin and talk to him.
He was the best.
That was a wonderful eulogy and I know it continues for you. We're sorry for your loss, but thank you for the memories.